To begin with today's program, I have to thank Sanofi-Genzyme and Biogen for giving us the funding to do today's program. I hope that you all appreciate it as well. Let's give them a round of applause. We cannot do our programs. We cannot do our programs without funding from the pharmaceutical industry. So next up, though, let's introduce a young lady who's done a lot in her life for her own battles with MS, as well as what she's doing in the country music world. And Julie Roberts is here today to speak with you all. She is a singer living with multiple sclerosis. She's going to share her 12-year journey with you right now. We are so excited to have her, as she literally just got off the bus, so to speak. She's literally just got off the road to come here and present to you all, to speak with you all for about 30 minutes. Come on up, Julie. Come around. Yeah. Anyway, she's going to speak to you about 30 minutes, and then we'll do Q&A, and then we'll keep on going here. But thank you again for coming.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is my very first time doing an event with Stuart. Can I get a little more monitor? So thank you, Stuart. Thank you all for coming out today and having lunch with me. I'm just going to give you a Reader's Digest version of my journey with MS, and hopefully inspire some of the rest of you living with MS to keep going, just like Jeff just did for us, which I love that, Jeff. Thank you. Well, I was country when country wasn't cool. Yeah, I was country from my head down to my boots. And I still laugh and look the same. What you see ain't nothing new. I was country when country wasn't cool. All right, y'all live in Nashville or around Nashville. Do y'all know who recorded that song first? Did you say that? What's your name? Kimberly knows her country music. Normally, it depends on where I'm at in the country, and sometimes it takes forever. But you got it right away. She said Barbara Mandrell. And I love Barbara Mandrell. I've always loved Barbara Mandrell. I'm originally from South Carolina, a small town called Lancaster. And Lancaster's about an hour south of Charlotte, North Carolina. And my home growing up was not a fun place. It was a home of domestic violence, and it was just not fun. I have two sisters, and Mama would take my sisters and me out of the house most nights of the week. And we'd go right across town to Mama's house. Mama's my grandmother, and she still lives in Lancaster, South Carolina. And it was like a 10-minute drive. And Mama drove a Ford F-150 truck, a white one. And on the way there, she would turn the country music up really loud. And that was our escape. She would sing really loud all the way to Mama's house. That's where I learned to love country music, because then I started singing really loud with her. I didn't know what I was singing, because it's country music, and I was little, but I knew every song, and I would sing with her. And we get to Mama's house, and Mama's house was a happy home. Mama cooked everything fried, which is not, as you heard earlier, Jeff, you mentioned diet, didn't you? A little bit. Well, we ate everything fried. Fried okra, fried squash, fried chicken, because Mama loved cooking fried. And it was a happy home. We got to watch the Carol Burnett show. We watched Hee Haw. And we watched the Mandrell Sisters show. And that's where I learned to love Barbara Mandrell. And from a very early age, Mama taught my sisters and I to be very strong in our faith. Faith is important in my life. And when we were at Mama's, she would say our prayers with each of my sisters before we go to bed. And it was my turn, and it's the prayer you've probably all heard, "Now lay me down to sleep." And at the end of that, I'd say, "God, please give me a record deal. And God, make me a singer like Barbara Mandrell." and help me to buy Mama a happy home. And I said that prayer from the time I was a little girl to the time those things began to come into my life. And I always believed that God was listening because Mama told me he was. But I knew the way to be Barbara Mandrell was to move to Nashville, Tennessee, was to move here. And I didn't know how to get here. So I started researching some of my favorite artists, one being Trisha Yearwood. And Trisha Yearwood went to Belmont University. Well, Belmont is not cheap. And I said, Mama, I want to move to Nashville. She said, you got to go to college. I said, I don't have to go to college to be Barbara Mandrell, Mama. She said, yeah, you do. And so I went to the University of South Carolina for 2 years, and I got a scholarship and a lot of loans, and I transferred to Belmont, and I finished here. And after I graduated, I got a job at Mercury Records. I had formed a band in college with everybody. Like everybody that goes to Belmont, they're either in nursing or they want to be a singer or songwriter or a musician. So we were playing everywhere we could in college. And then when we all graduated, we got jobs not in the business. Well, not playing. We got jobs answering phones. And mine was, I was the receptionist for 2.5 years at Mercury Records. Every day, I spent 8 hours saying, Mercury Records, this is Julie. How can I help you? And that's not what I prayed about. That's not what I wanted to do. But then I'd get off of work, and I'd go play with the guys that I'd met in college, and we'd go play at, well, y'all know these places since you live here. Y'all remember Bongo Java? We would play there. We play at, I don't think it's there anymore, but Guido's. It was a pizza restaurant. And we played at a place called Harvey Washbangers. Do y'all remember Harvey Washbangers? Well, Harvey Washbangers was a laundromat. I don't know that Harvey Washbangers is still there, is it? You knew? Well, Harvey said we could play there because we wanted, it's hard to get a gig in this town. Everybody's got them. But we just wanted to play. We wanted to play for free. And he said, you can play at the laundromat, but if you hear dryer number 3 go off, you got to say, dryer number 3, your clothes are ready. Actually, we said, your thong's ready. But I didn't know if I should say that, Stuart. But anyway, so we played there every night. And to work at Mercury, I couldn't tell anyone I was a singer. But I needed the job because as soon as you graduate, you have school loans. And mine were starting to come in. And I was living in an apartment, and Mama was back in South Carolina. And I wanted Mama to move to Nashville. I wanted her to have a new start. So you have a lot of idle time sitting at the front desk answering phones. And while I was sitting up there, I started faxing out Mama's resume to different industries here in Nashville. And I would change and make up her cover letter. I was pretending I was Mama. I'd say, hey, I'm looking to relocate to Nashville. This is what I can do. And I helped her get a job at a mattress factory in Nashville. So Mama started her life over at 50. She packed up her car, and she still had a Ford at this time, but it was a Ford Escort, a 91 Ford Escort. It was gray, did not go very fast, so we called it Gray Lightning. I think if we thought that if we called it that it would kind of go fast, but it never did. So Mama packed up, and she moved to town, and she started working at the mattress factory. And we have good mattresses now. But we moved into an apartment, and I continued to play at night, these clubs, continued answering phones. And one day, the president of Mercury Records came up to me, and he said, I love the way you answer phones. I said, great. You do? In my mind, I was thinking, okay, that's not what I want to do, but okay. He said, I want you to start answering my phones. His name was Luke Lewis. And he said, but if you're a singer, don't tell me, because I don't want a singer answering my phones. And I said, okay. He said, you'll get a pay raise. I said, okay, great. So I didn't tell him I was a singer, and I started answering his phones every day. Luke Lewis's office, this is Julie. Transferred it. So I did that for another 1.5 years. And my guitar player, we were still playing these venues at night, and my guitar player was the receptionist at a publishing company across town. And he kept running into this producer every day that had an office there named Brent Rowan. And he said, "Hey, Brent, I've been playing at the laundromat at night. Why don't you come hear us play?" And Brent said, "I'm not coming to a laundromat to hear you play." He said, "Do you have anything on CD?" And he said, "You know what? We had a class in college. We recorded something." So Brent listened to it, and he called me one day in Luke's office, and he said, "Hey, Julie, I heard your stuff, and the music is awful." And he said, "But I like your voice." He said, "Can you put the laundromat gigs on hold, and let's start recording at night when you get off?" I said, "Okay." So we did that for a while, just guitar vocals. We recorded about 5 songs. And he said, "I know you moved to Nashville for a record deal." And I said, "Yeah, I didn't move here to answer phones." He said, "I'm going to start taking this around to the labels in town." I said, "Okay." And he took them to every label in this town. RCA, Warner Brothers, Sony. Every label but the one I worked for. And they all said, "She's too bluesy, she's too soulful. And we want a pop country singer." Well, I was raised singing gospel music and traditional country music. So that was me. And Brent said, "Julie, don't change who you are. We'll keep working. We'll find it." And I kept praying. And time kept passing by, and I kept praying. I kept answering Luke's phones, doing his expense reports. And then Mama got a raise at the mattress factory, and we were able to buy our first happy home, a townhouse in West Nashville. It's not big, but it was ours, and it was happy. And it was the first time in my whole life I'd ever seen Mama smile. She dyed her hair blonde because she was a new person, and she started wearing red because my dad would never let her wear red. And she started wearing makeup. And so we were happy in our little townhouse. But I was still praying, "God, give me a record deal. Thank you for this house. Thank you, Mama's here. But I want to be Barbara Mandrell." And so finally, Brent Rowan came to me one day and he said, "Julie, I want to take it to your boss, Luke. I want to take what we've been working on to Luke." And I said, "You can't, because he'll fire me, and I cannot. We have a mortgage now." I said, "I can't lose my job." He said, "I promise if you'll get me on his calendar, you won't lose your job." So I went to my boss, and I said, "Hey, Luke, Brent's working with a new artist in town, and he'd like a meeting with you." He said, "All right, find a spot on my calendar." He never asked me if it was the artist's name. He never asked me, was it a guy or a girl? And I knew that was God working on my behalf. So I also knew the next day was the meeting. And Brent comes in smiling. He knew he was getting ready to play our stuff. And my boss listened to his music really loud, always with the door closed. And his door was closed. Brent was in there. I could hear my CD stop and start about 5 times. And my heart was racing. And every time I think about this, my heart starts to race. "Jeff, what can I do about that?" Seriously, I thought I'm going to lose my job. So Brent leaves the meeting, and he said, "Call me when you get off." And then my boss left, and he said, "I'll see you tomorrow." I said, "Okay, have a good night." And so I called Brent as soon as I could, and he said, "Luke stopped the CD the first time and said, 'Who is this girl? I want to meet her. I like her voice.' And he said, 'It's the girl right outside your office. She's your assistant.'" And Luke said a lot of things, Stuart, that I know I cannot say on this camera. But in essence, he said, "You got to be kidding me. She's not supposed to be a singer. And I don't know what I'm going to do." So it took him a few days. I knew he liked it, but he finally came back to me, and he said, "I heard your stuff, and I like it. And I know you don't like answering my phones, and I know you want a record deal. but I'm going to play it for the rest of Mercury Records exactly how it was played for me. I'm not going to tell them who it is. And if they like it, then I'll tell them it's you. If they don't like it, you can keep your job and you can keep answering my phones. I said, okay, deal. So it took him another couple of weeks, and he came back to me and he said, okay, Julie, I need a new assistant. And she definitely cannot sing. And he said, we're going to sign you to Mercury Records. And so God answered that prayer. And so at the end of 2003, I got to quit my job. I found him an assistant that definitely didn't sing. And I started finishing my record because Luke loved what we had already done. I finished my record. It came out in 2004. My first single was a song called Break Down Here. And God gave me way more than I ever asked for. All I asked for was a piece of paper that said record deal. And I asked for a happy home for Mama. But he put me on a bus, and I was traveling all over the country playing this song, Break Down Here. And he even took me to the Tonight Show with Jay Leno a few times, and my first album went gold. And I never thought any of that would happen. I had a booking agent. I got a booking agent. And I said, keep me on the road. I have been answering phones for all these years, and I'm ready to play shows. I said, I only want to come home to get my roots done. Blondes, you will understand that. And I said, or to record, because as soon as you put out one record, your label wants you to go ahead and start your next one. So I was on the road nonstop for a couple of years, and I loved it. Life was good. Even Mama got to come out occasionally on the weekends when she wasn't working. So I stayed out as much as I could. And in 2005, I was playing at a club, and it was a club where everybody stands at the front. And I could hear them singing my song, Break Down Here, back to me, the one they'd been hearing on the radio. And I love to make eye contact. If I didn't have to stand on this stage right now, I'd be walking around and looking at you right in the eyes. I am trying to from up here, but I like to walk around too. But in the middle of my show, my vision went blurry, and I couldn't see the people that were singing my song in front of me. And also, I'm right-handed, and my right hand went numb and weak, and I hold my microphone just like this. And I could no longer hold my microphone. So I switched it to my left hand, and the same thing happened. But there was a microphone stand on stage, and I was able to get my microphone in the stand. And I finished my show. And after my show, I always do signings, take pictures, meet and greets. And sitting at that front desk all those years, I had practiced my autograph for that day. And so I didn't have to be able to, I still couldn't see, but I was able to hold a Sharpie and sign my name without looking at it. And I got through that night, and I got back on the bus, and I called Mama. And I told Mama what happened. And she said, you're coming home soon to get your hair done. I said, yep, tomorrow. And she said, you're going to go right to your doctor. And so I came home, and I went straight to a primary care doctor who immediately sent me to a neurologist. The neurologist did tons of tests that I had no idea what he was doing, honestly. I learned I was claustrophobic when he put me in that MRI tube. I actually started kicking my legs and said, can you let me out, the first time. And then he did a spinal tap and all this stuff, and he said, how long are you here? I said, I'm here a couple of days because I was getting my hair done, and I was recording what would be my next single called Men and Mascara. Not Men in Mascara, Men and Mascara. And the line is, men and mascara always run. It's a country lyric. So I was in the studio the next day, or the next few days, and I get a call on my cell phone, and I know it's him calling me, and I didn't answer. Instead, I called Mama, And I said, hey, Mama, can you call the doctor? And she said, sure. Call me when you're done. I said, I don't want to stop singing. And so I remember exactly where I was when I called Mama back. I was coming up 65 North, headed to our townhouse in West Nashville. And I called Mama, and she said, I said, you talked to him? Yep. And I said, what'd he say? She said, well, he said, you don't have, I know she'd gone on the internet now, thinking back. You don't have this or this or that. I said, okay, Mama, what do I have? She said, you have MS. I said, okay. She said, why don't you pull over and I'll drive you home? I said, I'm good. I can drive home. We went through that again a few times. Well, no, just pull over. But anyway, I eventually convinced her that I could drive home. So I drove to our townhouse, and my younger sister, Lori, had moved to Nashville too, so we had a roommate, and we have 4 dogs. I love dogs, 4 little dogs. And we pull up to, we don't have a garage, we have a carport. We pulled up, I pulled under the carport, and I opened the back gate, and Mama and my sister and my 4 dogs were waiting on the patio for me. And I opened the gate, and Mama and my sister were crying. My dogs weren't crying, they were happy to see me. And I said, why are y'all crying? And Mama said, why aren't you crying? I said, I don't know. I said, all I can think about is Carol. I'll tell you really quick who Carol is. I met Carol in South Carolina. On Saturdays, I used to sing in nursing homes, gospel music, country music. And Carol was a very young woman. People always ask me how old I am, and I say 30 several. And Carol was 30 several. And she looked very different to me as a little girl from the other residents in the nursing home. And Carol wore bright red lipstick, which I loved. I always loved makeup. And Carol would ask me to sing Peace in the Valley for her. And she'd ask me to sing a song by Lori Morgan called What Part to Know. And I just had this special connection, but I always wanted to know, why is she here? No one would tell me, because they're not supposed to. But finally, someone said, Carol has MS and doesn't have a caretaker, and so she lives here. And so that is all I knew of MS was Carol. I had just started my life, and I thought that that would mean my life would be like Carol's. Now, Carol had MS long before there were any therapies, and I know that now. So I go to my neurologist appointment the next day. I told Mama again that I was just thinking about Carol, and I knew then why God had introduced me to her. And I didn't know why, and I didn't know what he wanted me to do, but I knew why I met her. I knew my music helped her, and I hoped that he still wanted me to do music. So I go to my neurologist the next day, and he gives me tons of literature on what MS is and the available therapies at the time. And I said, okay, thank you. And I leave. And I put all of that literature in a drawer in my bedroom, and I never read it. And if you're newly diagnosed or you know anyone that is, don't do what I did, because that's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to get on a therapy right away. I didn't know that. I felt fine after that first event. You know, I kept touring, released men and mascara. Had no idea that my disease was progressing, but it was. Okay, so I released men and mascara, and in 2009, did any of y'all watch Lifetime? Yeah. You do? Me too. And so Lifetime called me, and they said, we love this story about how country music saved you and your mom and your sister, and we're a channel for women, and we love how you worked for the man that eventually signed you and made your dreams come true, and we want to make a movie about you. I said, okay. And they said, but you got to move to L.A. I said, okay. And so I moved to Los Angeles, and I started working with a guy named Tom Rickman, who wrote Coal Miner's Daughter for Loretta Lynn. And I lived out there for a whole year, and it was one of the best years of my life. I rescued another dog. Eventually, Mama said, Julie, you got to stop rescuing dogs. But I have not stopped. I rescued another one a couple of years ago. So we worked on this movie. I took acting classes. And at the end of 2009, personnel changed at Lifetime. And my movie was put on hold. And keep in mind, I had put my music career on hold for this. So I said, okay, I asked the producer, I said, what does on hold mean in Hollywood? I know what it means in Nashville. They said it means it could be 10 years before your movie's made. You should probably move back and release another record and get on the road, do what you love. I said, oh, okay. So I moved back to Nashville at the end of 2009, and I started writing again and started finding music that would be on my third album. So by spring of the next year, I had some music, and I was ready to meet with my former boss, now head of my label, Luke Lewis. So I called him, and I said, hey, Luke, I'm back. I said, I'm ready to put out a new record. Can I play you some music? And he said, sure, come in. So I went into his meeting, and he said, before you play me anything, tell me about Lifetime. What's going on with that movie? I said, oh, it's on hold. And he said, okay, well, I don't want to hear any of your music because your career here is on hold. And I said, okay, well, what does that mean? Because I owe you I owed him like 5 more albums. And he said, that means you can wait. You can wait it out till your movie's made, or you can leave without a record deal today and try to find somebody else to put out your new music. But I don't want to hear it. Now, that was a harder day for me than hearing my mom tell me I had MS, because all I had ever wanted from the time I was a little girl was this record deal. And like that, it was gone. So I left that day not really knowing what I was going to do. I knew I had MS. So I don't know. I was like really sad, really, really sad. And just a few days later, many of y'all are familiar with this, the 1,000-year flood came through Nashville, Tennessee. Remember that? 2010, on May the 1st, 2010, just a few days after my meeting with Luke. A few people lost their lives in that flood. A lot of people lost their homes. And Mom and I lost our happy home. Our cars floated away. We lost everything. But we were rescued by boat. A boat came through the front door of our townhouse, put us in the boat, put all of my dogs in the boat, and we were saved. And I knew that I was saved for a reason. And so I said, okay, God, you got to show me what you want me to do now. Because I don't have a record deal, I don't have a home, but I'm alive, and I have MS. And when they finally let us come back to our home, and because, how the water had to go down, and they let me come back, they let us come back and start cleaning up, because nobody had flood insurance, as you know. And so I started trying to pull up carpet, and I couldn't use my hands again. My vision went blurry. The same symptoms came back as had 5 years prior. So even though I thought it had gone away, because back then I said, if I don't say it out loud, it'll go away. So I didn't tell anybody. The only, people that knew were Mama and my sister and my dogs. But it came back. Actually, it never went away. So Mama saw that I couldn't use my hands and that I couldn't see again. And she said, you need to go back to your neurologist. So I did. I went back the very next day, and I said, hey, doctor, I never read anything you ever told me, and I'm sorry. I said, actually, it's in the Harpeth River, so maybe somebody will get it and read it one day, but I never read it. He said, that's okay. Sometimes it takes people a while to accept it. And he said, I want to help you manage this. So I immediately started managing my MS then. And I started meeting. I wrote my letter to my fans first, and I told them I had MS. And then I told the music industry I had MS, and I lost my booking agent. I was always afraid to tell anybody because I thought my life would be taken from me, and it kind of was. when I told my booking agent that I had MS. He said, "Okay, I can't book you anymore." They were afraid I wouldn't be able to keep contracts. You know what I said? That's okay. I sat behind a computer a lot of years. I know how to book myself. And so, even though I was afraid, I started booking myself. I didn't have a car. Does anybody here work for State Farm? No? Well, I was going to tell you thank you if you did. I wasn't going to complain. So when I got my State Farm check for my car that had floated away, I didn't buy a car. I started my own record label. It's called Ain't Scared Records because I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't scared to tell people that I had MS, and I wasn't scared to live with MS. And I put out my first record called Alive, and I put out a Christmas record, and I just kept moving forward. I booked my own shows. I was not on a bus. I would rent a car or a van, but I was doing what I loved again. And a couple of years ago, I'll fast forward because I'm kind of running out of time. I was driving, so we rebuilt our townhouse, and we have this little piece of grass on our patio. And Mama loves fresh vegetables in the summertime. And so we have to go pick it up from this farm, our vegetables, because she only has room for one tomato plant. And so I would go pick up our vegetables from this farm. And on the way there, I was listening to Outlaw Country. And this song came on. It was like, just some good old boys, never meaning no harm. Y'all know that song? It's in Dukes of Hazzard. I watched that show at Mama's house. And it was a man named Waylon Jennings singing that to me. I thought he was singing it to me. But I was singing it back to him. I sang the whole song in that parking lot. And then I checked my emails, because when you're the only employee for Ain't Scared Records, you got to check your emails. So I checked my emails, and I get an email from a guy, and it said, "Hey, Julie." He said, "We met 10 or 12 years ago." And he said, "And I know you have MS. And I know that our industry is afraid of that. And I'm not. And I want to help you make your career record." And it was signed Shooter Jennings. And I thought it was a joke, and he'll tell you that. I was like, how did he get my email address after all these years? So it took me a few days, and finally I was in Houston, Texas, and I wrote him back, and I said, "Shooter, is this real?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, I want to help you make your career record. I believe in you. And I don't care that you have MS. And I said, "Okay." "I don't have any money." I said, "I spent my State Farm check on this other record." I said, "I cannot pay for another record." He said, "Just get to Los Angeles and we'll make a record." And he said, "We'll just start with one song." And I said, "No, I'm not coming all the way to Los Angeles. We're going to do at least two." And he said, "Okay." So I got on Priceline. I got me a cheap hotel. I got on Southwest Airlines. I made it out there. 2 songs 2 years ago now have turned into a full album that we just finished. And I'm really excited for y'all to hear it. Next year, it'll come out next year. And I just got off the road with Shooter playing these new songs. And I feel a lot stronger now than I ever did, even with the first record. Because I've lived a lot. And as you heard earlier with Jeff, life hands you ups and downs, and really it's how you handle it. And for me, what's kept me going is my music, but my faith, Mama, my dogs. Making this record was when I rescued another dog. And so that'll come out next year. And if you see this screen behind me, I've also been working on my life story. And it says with Ken Abraham, beauty and the breakdown. But it's actually going to be beauty in the breakdown. And it's kind of about breakdown here. And Ken is here, right here. Ken has spent many hours with me working on this. So y'all keep your eye out for that next year. I'm excited about it. And I'm excited to be standing here sharing just this little bit of my story with y'all. And you'll get a bunch more of my story in there. Crazy stuff. I'm just kidding. But before I leave, I just, every time I sing or speak, I always eat Halls. And I'm not paid by Halls, just so you know. But one day I was listening to someone speak before me. Jeff, I was listening to you. Wasn't you. But I was just looking down at my Halls wrapper, and they have pep talks in here. So if you're ever having a day where you feel like you just can't keep going, go buy you a bag of Halls. And I'm just going to tell you a few things it says. Push on. We all know we need to do that. Push on in life. Find those things that keep you going. Take charge and mean it. I knew how to book shows. I knew how to work a computer. So I took charge and I meant it. And y'all can do that. Whatever you want to do in your life, whether it's to walk a half mile, hold your grandchild, learn to cook fried okra like my mama, whatever you want to do, you can do it. Conquer today. Conquer whatever you want to do. And then this one was a good one, too. I had 2 Halls before I came up here. This one says, impress yourself today. And like Jeff was saying earlier, if you don't think you can do a squat, just sit up. Impress yourself. Find something and do it. We define our lives. And we can't let MS. And I thought MS was, and I told it was not going to, that I was. And one more. I think you'll like this one, Jeff. Flex your can-do muscle. You like that one? So, yes. Just always believe that you can do it, whatever you want to do. And God bless all of y'all. Thank you for letting me talk to you. And I'll see you next time. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
So I'm going to go around and take any questions that any of you might have for Julie. We're going to do that for about 5 minutes, okay? And again, thank you for doing this. What do you think about me helping Julie get out on the road and let her talk to all these MS people around, right?
Yes, I would love that.
We can do that. Great.
I love that.
All right, anybody have any questions for Julie? And there we go, way in the back. She's going to make me run. So here we go.
While you're
right,
running.
Jeff?
Are you ever symptomatic when you perform?
Knock on wood. I feel like that I found something that works for me, a therapy that works for me, and I do try to do the exercise. And Jeff and I were in a town not too long ago together, and he made me get out of the bed at 5 o'clock and work out. So I try to take care of me so that when I'm on stage, I can do what I love. And I pray before every show that that none of that comes back. And thankfully, it has not. So I think me choosing to manage MS has helped me to not have those on stage. Now, memory stuff, yeah. There's one song I can't remember the words to, and I hardly ever sing it. But yeah, hands and stuff and vision has been good. I know now why the movie wasn't made. It's because I had not lived through the flood, and I had not lived through MS, and I had not told the world. And I know when it is made, and when this book comes out, it's going to show the world that we can still live our dreams. It's going to educate the world on what MS is, and that's what I'm excited about. Any other questions?
I'd just like to say I'm glad I got to make it today with my friend. Living with the MS has been a struggle, and I've had a very personal issue that's been hard. And so I'm glad that I got to hear you today.
Aww,
so I'd just
I'm
like
so
to thank God
glad
for you today.
I'm glad you came with her.
Anybody else? Thank you, and thanks Dina for coming. I mean, she made a long trip in today.
Oh, thank you. Thank everybody.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, everybody.